Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. I think your audio isn't on. Okay. We have you now, and welcome to our very first Zoom Speakers Forum on Dataw Island. We're pleased to have you.
I'm happy to be there.
I'm
sorry, go ahead.
First and foremost, in the minds of my committee members are two things. One, how's the response to the virus going? And the second thing is, what do you think the long-term economic impact will be on Beaufort and the surrounding area?
You're asking me to do a lot of guessing. There's no doubt that there's in a community that's so dependent upon the military, who are pretty much staying to themselves, with graduations postponed. That's certainly a hit. This is a good time for tourism, and per the governor's orders and good sense, we're not booking people who are coming from the facilities are not booking people coming from places that are hotspots. Restaurants are down to skeletons. Most of the hotels are closed. Recreation's pretty much shut down. So a good bit of what Beaufort does is essentially shut down, but we don't have very much manufacturing. Retail is more or less shut down. If you look at the governor's lists, shall we say, of businesses, instead of saying what's opened, he's saying what can open, but it's quite ambiguous in that, you know, a nursery on Ladies Island has to close, but Lowe's, because it's a hardware store, has their nursery open, or Walmart, or what have you. So it's a bit mixed, but I think probably the most positive thing is that people are doing their best. Can always do better. It's social distancing. But we're going to see an impact in terms of the businesses. We're going to see an impact in terms of the hospitality and accommodations taxes. They have reached out to us and already asked us for more money than we've got to prop them back up in terms of a marketing campaign when things return to normal. But reading, there's a fabulous piece in the Wall Street Journal today about what the new normal will be, whether it's workers having their temperature taken, whether it's plexiglass between restaurant booths, whether it be, I mean, an opening up is going to be more complicated than a shutting down. But at least people are talking about a plan. I wish the governors and the president would get on the same page. I think a lot of people don't realize that under state law, even though Beaufort is the only government in Beaufort County that passed a stay-at-home ordinance, whatever the governor says supersedes, overrides what we do. So in many ways, it's symbolic, but we think the more we can hammer in the message, the more people who self-distance, the more people who stay at home, the faster that we can turn this around. So that's been our principal push. You know, Beaufort's resilient. The biggest question to me, the most urgent need, is the unemployment promises to those people who've been laid off or fired, whose jobs may come back or may not come back. Because to me, the first thing to recovery is having a healthy workforce. And unless we were able to provide the support that those who are the big losers have gotten as a result of this, they're the backbone of our community. So that's sort of where I am on that. I wish I could give you a more definitive answer, but there's really no way to tell. We would normally gauge by hospitality taxes and accommodations taxes, which come in on a regular basis, by renewal of business licenses. But to avoid a hardship on businesses, we've given extensions to them paying any taxes or fees for the time being until June 20th, which is where we have to begin to finish out the budget, which has to be in place by the end of June. We'll see what those projections are, but there's no real read other than the anecdotal of riding by and seeing who's open, who's closed.
Right. Okay. Well, moving on to some other issues that we wanted to discuss with you. Can, pandemic aside, can you update us on the Ladies Island traffic projects and the Whitehall development?
Anecdotally, yes. The Ladies Island, it seems to me that through the Northern Implementation Committee plan and the Ladies Island plan, that in a sense the traffic is going to be pushed back a little bit, because why would you put in the infrastructure when you're looking at an overall plan? However, I know that there is a plan to move forward on the right turn lane on the west side going south on 280. In other words, at Walgreens, there will be a turn lane so that two lanes can go straight towards the McDeer Bridge.
Right.
That's the only activity that I'm aware of at the moment, because we were in such a rush to deal with traffic that we didn't think about the context of an overall plan. So there is a plan in place, but it's conceptual. Some of the things that the city has agreed that we would, in concept, pull back our growth boundaries a little bit, which were agreed on almost 12 years ago, our growth boundaries. But it's contingent also on the county coming up with a fill limitation ordinance so that low lots can't be built up, creating bigger problems. A ordinance that says that if there's no sewer, no house with a septic tank can be on less than 2 acres. And thirdly, and to me the most importantly, would be disclosure of sea level rise, meaning that just like we do with the AQ's air installation compatibility use sign for flyovers, when someone buys a house, they ought to be apprised by the seller, by the realtor, and the buyer ought to sign an understanding that they know the property's height level and its storm level risk based on the best projections. The real answer, quite frankly, is either to find the money over $100 million, the price goes up every day, for a third bridge, or to try to slow down, if not stop, the development on Ladies Island. We have plenty of room to grow on the west side of Battery Creek, in other words, go through Beaufort. There's plenty of vacant land actually in the core city for new residential development, and there's room out 170 and out Highway 21 where we should be steering both so that it's not bridge dependent and it doesn't compound a problem for which there's no long-term solution other than $100+ million that I don't see us in this environment getting.
Well,
So,
along those lines, then, how would the Whitehall development fit into all that?
Whitehall, the county has proceeded. They have not, I don't think they've given us a final plan. As you know, the city did agree that we would maintain it, and the developer agreed that he would participate in that. Unfortunately, the developer and the county are in lawsuits. But when I spoke to him last week, he's full speed ahead, other than being tied up with spending a lot of money and a lot of time on a lawsuit with the county that really did not have to happen in terms of the original agreement being changed. So, but it plans to be basically a 10-acre passive park, and single-family residence, maybe some duplexes or triplexes, but no large apartment buildings was at one point the case. There's also a plan, the county is committed to it, to build a path that comes off the Woods Bridge across the marsh, right to Whitehall and through Whitehall, connecting to Meridian Road, with a hope of finishing the long-term project was to by bicycle connect Beaufort and Port Royal, not only by the Spanish Mountains Trail, but by connecting the two bridges. So I think Whitehall's a go. It's just a question of timing, and getting silly lawsuits out of the way. Silly to me. I'm sure they're not silly to the county or to the property owner.
Okay. What all does the Reconstruction Monument involve, and why is it so important to Beaufort County?
Up until 2000, the year 2000, no one in a federal capacity, our government, let us say, federal government, in no way, nor our classrooms, nor the textbooks, in no way really told the stories of Reconstruction. In 2000, then Secretary of the Interior, Bruce Babbitt, said, this is missing. And so he went to Foner at Columbia University, who's probably the most prominent of the Reconstruction, of several prominent Reconstruction historians, came to Beaufort with Babbitt. They met with community leaders, and they said we should go for recognition of Reconstruction, and it should be in Beaufort. Unfortunately, it got caught up in a congressional fight between Sons of the Confederacy, and it got postponed. But in 2016, Babbitt and Congressman Cloudman called and said, we've got a new way to do it if we can get local community behind it. Community fell in line, and within a very short period of time, we were able to convince the Obama administration to create a Reconstruction era monument. That's not a granite stone, it's 4 specific sites. But within 2 years of that time, before the park was really open and running, the United States Congress transitioned it from a monument, meaning 4 sites, to a national historical park, with the potential of expanding the boundaries to include more stories in the Beaufort County area, and also as the headquarters, the base, were responsible for building a national network. So it's a huge boon to Beaufort. It recognizes our unique Reconstruction history, which is, frankly, a more pleasant story than many other places, but it makes us the go-to place for people who want to learn, and for people here who want to teach, and stories here that have never been told. So it really creates an opportunity to open up a chapter of history that's never written right here in Beaufort County, South Carolina. So we're very excited about it. There are a number of individual groups, Mitchellville Preservation Project, among others, who are working on Reconstruction related. A group of us, over 100, who worked on getting the monument in the park, they formed something called Reconstruction Beaufort. And our function is twofold. Firstly, to support the park, to help them in any way we're able. And secondly, is to develop educational processes and materials, build a model that can be used in other places for what we call experiential arts-infused education, which means that we work with 11 to 15-year-olds. We teach them how to have enough about Reconstruction to be able to ask questions. We teach them to ask questions and then filter them through their untarnished minds and translate them into videotapes, stories, into visual arts, into just written word, spoken word, poetry, theatrical productions. And we now, even though it's been slow, because we're a brand new organization. It's been slow in coming. We now have, we started a Reconstruction Beaufort Children's Choir that once it's refined, they had a premiere. They're going to travel as ambassadors, first around the region, then around the state, and hopefully around the country, bringing stories of Reconstruction to people who've never considered it. We have, I think, 4 videos completed, one of which is a 30-minute written by middle school students, acted by middle school students, produced by middle school students, 30-minute play on the life of Harriet Tubman. So as we get funding and as we get back to normal, we have working with Beaufort County School District, who's interested in integrating Reconstruction history into curriculum at several levels. Just as we were sort of getting some traction, of course, the world stopped, and we have more urgent day-to-day needs, and we've been separated, so it's been a little difficult. But we're patient. This is what we're dealing with today is certainly much more important, more timely, not more important, but more timely. Oddly, both of them experiences, learning about Reconstruction is learning about how we use the history to build common ground. And as the nation, if not the world, struggles with how to deal with this virus, once again, we're back to the fact that we really need to find ways to establish common ground, to rally together as a country, setting aside the rhetoric, setting aside partisanship, setting aside geography, race, age, and say, somebody sent us a message that we need to clean up our act. And that means we need to get more civil. We ought to march to a leadership hand in hand and put to sleep this virus before it takes too many more lives. And so common ground is something that's always been on my mind, but these are 2 examples. In fact, I'm working on a book right now. It's called, its working title is Finding Common Ground, and I'm using Reconstruction. And now we're going to weave in some of what we see and we hope for as we deal with the coronavirus.
Okay.
Long answer, short question, long answer, huh, Becky?
No, we love that. Will there ever be a multi-story hotel downtown? And how do you plan to balance the need for economic vibrancy in Beaufort with the respect for the downtown's historic character?
2 things. One is that the downtown historic character, there's still plenty of vacant space where things that are appropriate and fit can go. There's always the conversation, and I feel strongly that we've made a mistake in recent years through our architectural historic review process of making it easier for builders, for families, for developers to build copies of grand houses, rather than to continue our history. History doesn't stop at place. There are ways of looking for things. Now, because we're in a landmark district, we have to be extremely careful to respect mass, scale, relationship to the street, and height. We have the Beaufort Inn is a 3-story structure already. We have a number of residentials that are 3 stories. I think going above that, typically 50 feet is what we use as the rule. There's room to do that, but you can't put a 50-foot tall building next to 2 1-story buildings because you're disrupting that block. So it's work of a surgeon, I'm not sure what to say, of a brownfield developer. And then there are areas that are outside of the historic landmark district, over across Battery Creek on the western side. There's plenty of space out Highway 170. where Port Royal is connecting with 70. A lot of that's in Port Royal. To the north of that, there's room on 170. And out Highway 21, though it's separated by the AQs from the air station, there's plenty of room there. And quite frankly, I've always thought that we were making a mistake to put too much on Ladies Island or St. Helena because of the bridge dependency, plus the character of St. Helena Island, to me, needs the same kind of respect as our landmark district does, because it represents a people and a time of place that are part of our story. The zoning.
Just to insert, I think the committee actually had another question, which is germane to this, in that you plan to, the city plan to annex any more parcels on Ladies Island to help out with your tax revenue?
No. The only parcels that the city has its eye on to annex are within what we would consider the village center, which is essentially Highway 21, as far between Walmart and the bridge, and it may not go as far as Walmart. The Ladies Island plan calls for a village center, and it just so happens that we have a lot of what are called donut holes there, areas where we may serve one business that's in the city and not serve the adjacent business. That's not very efficient. We haven't forced annexations, we've incentivized them. But at some point in time, what I think will be, maybe beyond my time, but will be downtown Ladies Island. Just like I believe that the Boundary Street project in 170 created downtown Burton, west of the city. East of the city, I think we'll have a downtown Ladies Island, which means that a lot of the traffic, a lot of it can be captured on Ladies Island, so that you don't have to cross a bridge, so that you can get your daily needs filled, whether it's clothing stores, department stores. We've got pharmacies. We're going to get more fast food restaurants. People don't want fast food restaurants, except the people who sit in line behind the fast food restaurants, who patronize them, just like people didn't want a Walmart, which the city actually fought. But the reality is that Walmart has probably served better people on St. Helena, Ladies Island, Fripp Island, by not requiring that they drive through town, not have to cross a bridge. So it's an idea of capturing. So the only annexation that I see will be along that corridor. And they will be pieces that sit between pieces that are already in the city. I don't anticipate, we were at one point asked if we wanted to annex what is called Oyster Landing, I think that's what's called, where they clear cut the trees. We chose not to, because we didn't think we could give reliable services at a reasonable amount for the city to afford for residential. Unfortunately, had we annexed it and had they operated under the Beaufort code rather than the county code, we might see something that we might not have seen so many trees coming down. But our focus is simply to build a commercial and mixed use corridor there that would become a central gathering place, let's say, for the islands, without having to be across a bridge. Downtown Beaufort is pretty much, the market has identified it as tourism and gifts and fine dining, which is fine, but there's not many of the kinds of retailers who sell what you and I and others listening want to buy every day. You don't find those downtown for any number of reasons. So let downtown be the destination, and let's try to get the goods and services people need closer to where they live.
Okay. Just going back briefly to downtown, there was a flap a couple of months ago about the Historic Beaufort Foundation having a seat on the Historic District Review Board.
Right.
What's the update on that?
The update is that I guess I started that flap. I think it was in 2004, when, having been in worked in Washington on the Hill and been in the legislature, I learned that I didn't think that someone who sits on a regulatory board should be a seat on a regulatory board that has the final say should belong to any one group, any one special interest. They ought to be people the city council hires, so to speak, to points because of a certain skill level they have. And but when the ordinance was created, because Beaufort and City will and Historic Beaufort Foundation worked so closely to create the district, and through the years, there was a seat that was designated. And for me, it's an ethical issue. It has nothing to do with the work of Historic Beaufort Foundation, or even restructuring our panel. A majority of council agreed with me, but there was so much bad feeling with Historic Beaufort Foundation that I recommended to City Council that we put it on the back burner, but that we look for ways in which Historic Beaufort Foundation could be working with the city constructively to do things neither of us have done, not the least of which is a long-term preservation plan, not the least of which is better training for members of our boards and commissions and the interest groups who promote them so they understand the consolidation of a disparate set of rules into something that's more easy to understand. An effort to bring more young people into the process and into the board. And that group I appointed two from City Council, actually one who agreed with me and one who disagreed with me, to be fair, to serve on a panel with the city manager, and three members from Historic Beaufort. I think they've been making some good ground. It doesn't come back to the question of the seat. As an interim measure, we asked someone whose term had ended if he would come back and fill that seat so there wouldn't be and he happens to have been the person who was in that seat recommended by HBF. Don't want to disrupt the process, but I think that we have to really look carefully. In the 70s, when they wrote the ordinance, the world was different than it is today. I don't think we should have home builders there lobbying to have a certain kind of a house. Historic Beaufort is a very strong and healthy advocacy group. I think they do a great job, but I don't think they need to have a seat. But anyway, because I don't want to leave this thing dangling and I don't want continued bad feelings, what I have done personally is written to the, well, first of all, I went and looked at the law and with the help of the Municipal Association. And it's totally up to City Council, the composition of their boards and their commissions. So we can do really what we want. But given we're changing something for what people are accustomed to and some really like, I decided I had to go further than that. So I have asked the Attorney General's office if they would give me an opinion as to ethical considerations of one group is advocating one thing, having a voting position, one of only 5 voting positions, on a body that makes decisions that are the final say. There's no appealing to the City Council. The only appeal is to the court. So if you don't get approved by the Historic District Review Board, your only recourse is to go to court, which is very costly, time consuming. And of course, we'd like to not have that. So I have not yet heard, and I doubt with things as they are today, with the government slowdown in the priority setting, it may be a while. But if we get, if we get, when we get that opinion, if the Attorney General's office says that it doesn't look like there's any impropriety, then as far as I'm concerned, let's let it be over. Let's keep the seat. If they say that they think that in 2020, even the perception of interference or extra influence of an outside body on the city's regulatory process, then I would say we should go ahead and have second reading on the vote and terminate the seat and move forward. I don't like us being in a logjam. I think taking a little time off has been helpful. I think the city and by my direction, the city along with the Historic Beaufort Foundation have been doing some very good work together. They've established, working with the Department of Archives and History, an updated training program. They're beginning to look at the different guides and guidelines to see how they can be consolidated. So we're doing some good work. You know, there are a lot of people who feel very strongly on both sides of this issue. For me, it's not about the who, it's about the what, and that is, does it look right? And if it, and government, if it doesn't look right, it's probably not right in people's minds if we want to keep people's trust. So is it all right? Does it for one particular group to have a seat when realtors would like to have a seat, home builders would like to have a seat. There are others who would like to have a seat on that regulatory commission. That's not the way it should work. So we'll see.
Okay. When things do return to normal and you get to resume some of the planning that you all have been doing, what efforts are underway to attract businesses to the area, and what kinds of businesses are you aiming for? Anything in medical or research or pharmaceutical or tech or anything like that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think a lot of us have a dream that the Naval Hospital will one day become a major medical research and service center. But I don't know, beyond the work of Technical College and USCB in their healthcare modules, the nursing programs, that we're doing much there. We've focused on the spin-off industries, the smaller manufacturers who are maybe sourcing parts for the automobiles or the aircraft that are being built in Savannah and in Charleston. We created the digital corridor for startup businesses where they can come and be inside a culture where there are people who are doing what they're doing with technology and apps and computers. That is full with small businesses. We've hosted people from other cities can come and work there as well, with the idea of working to create that technology culture that we need to attract businesses. Also been working with the Technical College, USCB, and others on a cybersecurity program. There's a very, very long list of available jobs in cybersecurity with no workforce to handle it. So we've been working on that. Meanwhile, our Commerce Park will probably make more headway on better jobs with better salaries in our Commerce Park than was made in the last 10, if not 20 years. All the vacant buildings are filled. We're in the process of negotiating to build one, if not two, spec buildings, because we've had a number of companies who've come and would like to be here, but they don't want to stop, take the time to build the building. They want to move into it. They call it product. So we need that product, but I don't have the real numbers, but the capital investment and the number of jobs created over the last 16, 18 months is significantly more than the last 10 years. This is very important because it's actually important to everything you and I've talked about. Because one of the things that makes Beaufort special to a native anyway, and I hope to many of the people that did to Bill Cochran when he came down and made decisions about Dataw.
The initial Alcoa developer, Bill Cochran, right?
With Alcoa, was that he realized that there was something authentic to us, that we were a real town where we had a mixture of retirees, of visitors, and people who go to work. That number of people who go to work, particularly in the younger demographic age, keeps getting smaller. And if we become solely retirement communities, solely visitors to a historic landmark district, we're going to lose our soul, we're going to lose our authenticity, which is one of the things that makes us different, that I think is one of the reasons we're all here. Dataw did a fabulous job. Maybe it was a developer not wanting new residents to park in his office and complain all the time. But Bill was very aggressive about encouraging people who live on Dataw to be engaged in the community, and he was extraordinarily successful. I've heard things like, of all the gated communities in Beaufort County, Dataw generally is the most generous to the United Way. It's very rare that you go to the museum or to the hospital or to the Historic Beaufort Foundation or any Red Cross. It's very rare I go to any of the organizations that serve the people of Beaufort that I don't find people from Dataw who are volunteering. Of course, there's the long-term program with reading with the schools. So, Dataw, you can't, I tell people, someone said, why would you be talking to Dataw? And I said, well, they can't vote me out of office. I can't raise their taxes, but they're a very important part of our community. And you were built that way. The partnership, as you may or may not know, but the way through a community development block around economic development is the way the city applied for and loaned the money to Dataw to build the wastewater system for the island, which is not only serves the island, but now is spread with extensions. And the money was paid back to the city in the long run. So that partnership between the city and the island and people in the island is very important to us. So enjoy us. I'm not going to raise your taxes. You can't vote me out of office, but we're all part of the same family. Right. I have a very unique relationship. It's probably because I'm retired from traditional business and am accessible, but people ask me what it's like to be the mayor of Beaufort, and I say, do you mean the 13,500 moderate to low income people who live in the city limits, or the 65,000 people who live north of the Broad River who all think I'm their mayor? So I enjoy it and think it's important because political boundaries we can't let political boundaries separate us. For example, the city of Beaufort and the town of Port Royal share a fire department. We have one fire department. By merging the two, we were better able to utilize our resources around the core missions, and as a result, we have the best, for insurance purposes, the best fire rating that any town our size could have by putting the two together, sharing resources. So it works very well, and so I like to see these partnerships, and we don't need a community, a neighborhood to annex into the city to benefit from these partnerships. I talked to the previous county administrator. I said, we pick up garbage. If you ever go to curbside garbage, maybe you want to get with us and we do a joint contract, which will get everybody a better service. if we partnered on landscaping services, we might get a better deal for each of us. In fact, the city of Beaufort and the town of Royal, we have an ordinance that requires our city or town manager, if they're ever going to make a major procurement, they're required by our statute to talk to the sister city or town to see if they would like to go in on it with us. Because with numbers, there's efficiency, particularly in things like solid waste, landscape, stuff like that.
Well, I have one more question for you. You've served 3 terms as mayor. Now what? And what's been the most fun and what's been the most challenging?
Certainly the most fun is 3 terms. I've had a different combination of people on 3 different councils because our seats are rotated. And I can't say that I've ever worked with a better group of people in terms of finding common ground, in terms of building consensus, in terms of making decisions in an orderly way. So I think probably the best part of it is working with council and working with our fabulous city manager, deputy city manager, fire chief, police chief, and all of our staff, clerk. We get together as a city family usually twice a year, and through a picnic or some sort of a meal, and try to celebrate family. And I think that our services have become better. I think we've been much better at customer service because we're a team and we take great pride in what we do. So that's what I've liked the best is being the, with quotes, leader of a group of people, all who share a love for their hometown and wanting it to grow the right way, and have a brighter future even brighter future for the next generation. In terms of dislikes, I get harrowed by lots of emails that are from people who are uninformed, but whose fault is it they're uninformed? Is it mine? Is it the newspaper? Is it they don't want to know? But there's not really a lot I don't like, because if someone writes me a terse email, it gives me the opportunity to write back, and hopefully in a loving way, and calm them down. I've made a number of friends who have come after me pretty viciously, and I get, oh my God, you answered me. Well, that's what it's about. I think leadership has a lot to do with what one does with one's ears. And if you listen to people, you don't have to agree with them, just be honest with them. But I think, I get overwhelmed sometimes with the numbers of emails. I get overwhelmed sometimes because people from all over Beaufort County call me because I don't know why. They think I'm the mayor, or I'm the only person who has a listed cell phone, or it's considered the mayor's office is my cell phone because I don't have an office at City Hall. So I think that if there's anything that's not been fun, it's just sometimes feeling that I'm behind in answering emails or returning phone calls. Even when we've made some mistakes, which we have, I don't hold pain for them. I like to think that speaking from the heart, telling the truth, and owning and learning from mistakes is good too. So we've done some things that the public didn't like, or we've set out some ideas, like the marine parking lot, where the community went crazy, didn't like what we wanted to do, and there were enough of them that I was convinced they were absolutely right. I also knew that the soils that were going to make it very, very expensive to do. But so I can't say there's anything I don't like. I know that may sound weary. I love our meetings. I love our 3 times a month, 2-hour work sessions where we sit around a table, don't vote, just talk to each other about ideas, try to build consensus. I even like coming to Dataw and talking to the community and taking questions. I'd say probably 1 out of 6 of the emails I get asking for questions or giving opinions come from Dataw. Again, I don't resent that. That's good because without you, we would not be as strong as we are today.
What about your next act?
My next act, you
After,
mean
after you finish being mayor?
I'm going to work with at 3:30 or whenever it is. I'm supposed to work with an Eagle Scout student who needs to interview a public official. So we're going to Zoom interview, and then we have city council we're going to do. I will have to decide by or no later than a certain date in August whether or not to file for re-election. In December, between serving in the South Carolina House of Representatives for 4 years, on City Council for 4 years, and as mayor for 12, that's 20 years. And I have to decide whether to practice what I preach, which is when I go to the schools, I say that I'm a bridge between my parents' generation and them. And at some point, one of the reasons I have my young leaders program and what we're doing with Reconstruction with young people is to prepare them. And at some point, I'll say, okay, so the next generation is prepared, and I can go to the sidelines while I'm still active and healthy and happy and loving my city and work for it in other ways. On the other hand, I could say, well, we haven't finished, we haven't really started what I call downtown Ladies Island. There's still more work to do on Boundary Street, but they'll always be, and no one is irreplaceable. We'll have another mayor should I decide not to run, who I'm sure will be good and who I will certainly support. So, fortunately, I have the luxury, and a time like this is certainly, to me, not the time to think about staying or leaving. It's time to do what needs to be done today and tomorrow.
That is certainly true. Well, we'll be following your thought processes with great interest, and when the time comes, we'll be watching and see what you do. And on behalf of the government and community relations out here at Dataw, we just want to thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today. Any final thoughts for Dataw and that you'd like to say?
I would just like to. I know a number of people on the island do get my newsletter, but if you want to know what's on my mind, you may agree or not agree. That's part of the purpose of the newsletter, is to throw out and play with ideas. If don't receive my newsletter, all you need to do is go to, or you can email me at billyk@islc.net. But even easier is to go to mayorbilly.com, where there's a way to sign up for the newsletter automatically. I'll put them out. Well, since coronavirus, I think I'm on number 22 or 23 today. Then pretty much every day when there's something to say. But unfortunately, this thing is slower than I think warrants a newsletter every day at this point in time.
Right.
But at mayorbilly.com, you can sign up. I'd love to have you on it. And if you don't like it, some of the people who I have very differing traditional political opinions from, who live on Dataw, I love getting my email and respond to me, and we have good conversations. So I invite you all to do that, and I'm happy anytime to come to Dataw.
Well,
So
we hope
just
we
let me
can
know
we
when
can
I
get
can.
you back, and good luck with the management of this pandemic. And if there's anything that you need to talk to us about, in the future on this, don't hesitate to get in touch.
I would say, I'm going to step aside. This is my recommendation of the day.
Okay. We've got that, and we're being very careful out here. And although Zoom has given us a way to really stay in touch, and I think who knew a couple of months ago that we would be doing this.
Yeah, we'll have our council meeting, and actually, council and
I
I are a
watched.
little concerned because we like it a lot. we can actually see each other in the face rather than bending over and looking around somebody. I love having the council members right there because it's easier to know who to recognize, who clearly has something to say, so that they don't miss anyone, so that no one misses an opportunity. And streaming it through Facebook, people can actually text questions that you have, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Exactly. That was just an amazing thing to see that. So it's
6 o'clock this evening.
well, it's a brave new world for us boomers, isn't it?
It really is.
Well, thank you again so much, and we'd love to see you again.
Okay, everybody be safe.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Bye-bye.